Hi viewers, in this video I will show you how my brother replaced the front wheel brake pads and rotors on a Kia Soul 2011.
First, the car was parked on level floor with the shifter in park position. A breaker bar was used to loosen the wheel lug nuts and they were unscrewed only one half turn. The parking brake was put on and the other wheels were also blocked. The car was jacked up and a jack stand was used for extra safety. Then he removed the 5 lug nuts. The wheel was stuck on the hub and he gave it a good whack to loosen it. When you live in a region where salt is used to melt the ice on the streets, the brake components are rusting quite fast. With penetrating oil, he began by lubricating around the wheel studs and the two rotor bolts. He used a Phillips bit with locking pliers. As shown, he pushed on the bit and hit it while rotating the pliers. After, he needed a 14mm wrench or a ratchet to remove the two bolts that held the caliper. With stubborn bolts, a cheater bar or an impact tool can be used. However, he utilized the shop hammer as shown. If the caliper is too tight, the piston can be depressed using a clamp to loosen it. In that case, it was faster to use the locking pliers. He pulled the pliers to depress the piston. When the caliper was removed, it was hanged with a small bungee cord and positioned to avoid damaging the brake hose. After, it was time to remove the caliper bracket. It can be removed with or without the brake pads. The two retaining bolts have 17mm X heads. He did not have to hit the rotor to loosen it. He only had to wiggle it to remove it. A coat of anti-seize was applied on the hub flange to prevent the rotor from seizing. The surface of the rotor was degreased and cleaned with a rag and brake cleaner. The rotor was positioned in place and the two small retaining bolts were reinstalled. The torque for the rotor bolts was set at 4 foot-pounds. After that, he began to work on the caliper bracket. Using a vise made it easier to remove the brake pads and the caliper pad clips. On the caliper bracket, he noticed that there was some rust built up behind the pad clips. If the pads and the clips are replaced without removing the rust built up, the pads could be too tight to properly move even if they were lubricated. He removed it with a file as shown. He also verified if the caliper guide pins were moving freely. They were not, and he decided to grease them with brake lubricant. It is also good practice to install new pad clips on caliper brackets. The pad wear indicators should be installed on the inboard side of the caliper bracket with the leading edge in the upwards position. The brake pads can be pre-installed on the bracket. On the other side of the car, one pad was not moving well and the edge of the mounting tab had to be grinded to improve the adjustment. The caliper bracket was reinstalled with the pads on. The two bolts were fastened and the torque was set at 50 foot-pounds. Before depressing the caliper piston, the cap of the brake fluid reservoir must be removed. To be able to install the caliper with the new pads, the piston must be slowly and fully depressed. Note: some people open the bleeder valve to discharge the old brake fluid when depressing the piston to avoid possible contaminated fluid to flow back into the ABS actuator. Because the brake fluid was clear in the reservoir, my brother decided that this step was not required. When the piston is depressed, the brake fluid level in the reservoir must be checked and siphoned off if required. After that, when the piston was seated, the caliper was installed. The two bolts were aligned and fastened with the guide pins. The torque was set at 20 foot-pounds. After that, the wheel was reinstalled with the 5 lug nuts. The jack stand and the jack were removed. The lug nuts were tightened as per owner manual instructions. The brake fluid was checked and leveled. The brake pedal was depressed several times until my brother felt a normal resistance under his foot. The brake fluid level was rechecked and the reservoir was closed. The wheels were unblocked and later he drove the car to test the brakes. After some minutes, he came back and he was very satisfied with the result.
For your safety, you should not wait for the wear indicators to squeak before inspecting your pads and rotors. The old parts were in bad condition and they had to be replaced. I hope you notice a procedure that can help you with your front brake project.